And hello again, this is Mike. A lot of times we get focused on the big, sexy projects on our layouts, and some of the smaller projects that we could get done in an hour or two just kind of pile up on the workbench because, well, they're not as important. Well, those little projects can be important too, and we're going to tackle 4 projects that will have been on my workbench for quite some time. And we're also going to look at some unusual places to get the parts needed for the repairs. We are going to fix some common electrical problems with O27 turnouts using nail polish from the dollar store. We're going to fix an MTH accessory with parts from Hobby Lobby. We're going to rebuild a caboose with parts from an antique mall. And yes, we're going to fix a locomotive with parts from a regular Lionel dealer. So 4 different types of projects that you can get done in an hour or less usually on your layout, and keeping our eyes open for parts from unusual places to fix the problem. So let's get started. So my first project is fixing sparking on turnouts. Now this happens a lot with these K-Line O42 turnouts, but I've also seen it occasionally happen with Lionel O27, K-Line O27. And what I'm describing here is, say, a piece of rolling stock comes across, and as it rolls through, you get a very big spark. Now, I'm not talking about when it goes over the non-derailing switches, and sometimes you get that arcing with the dirty track. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a big bang spark, and it always happens in the same place in the same time, and only with certain cars or certain locomotives. And sometimes it's just a little spark. Sometimes it's a bigger spark that might set off the overload light on your transformer, and in extreme cases it can actually trip your circuit breaker. So what is causing these issues? And what we have here in these turnouts, what is causing these is when we get a short circuit between the outside rails and the center rails. Well, how does that happen? Well, you look with the geometry, especially of these wider radius curves, a couple of things can happen. First of all, right here, where here we have the center rail power, and right here we have outside rail power. And sometimes if the roller pickup is just a little too wide, or maybe it's not centered properly, or maybe the spring isn't really strong and it's wandering around, part of that center rail pickup can clip right here and touch right here at the same time, or at least come close enough that it creates an arc and sparks across. So that is one issue. So sometimes we'll get a piece of rolling stock that has a fat wheel, or maybe the gauge is just a little bit narrow, and whatever the cause, we have the back side of the wheel, as it comes right here through the frog, will either make contact with or just be close enough to create an air gap spark between the center rail through the wheel to the common rail. So we need to add some insulation to help keep this from happening. And the easiest solution I have found and most durable actually is different types of nail polish. You can get this at the dollar store. It doesn't have to be great, but I find that this is a little bit more durable than paint. And it's also cheaper per ounce, especially if you get it at the dollar store, and it has its own handy applicator. And so just to make sure, I will coat the inside of this all the way through, and I give it some extra coverage just to be sure. So the other place that I will insulate is on this back side here of the swing rail. Just to make sure nothing's creating a gap across there, because really our circuit is going to be right here in the outside rail here. So we really don't need this. So, I kind of insulate, and I go a little overboard. Now make sure when you're doing this, center your points, because you don't want anything drying frozen in place. So again, I overkill some spots where I probably don't even need this stuff. but I'm any place that I can possibly imagine that the current can jump across, I am going to put a little bit of this on there. And it's very durable, depending on how many trains, how big your trains are, and how often. You might have to touch it up every couple of months or so. But for the most part, once you do it, it's good. Black would be better, although for some reason black tends to be more expensive. Maybe it's that goth thing. I don't know if that's still in. But this was the darkest color I could find at the dollar store while I was there. So anyway, I'll set the points in the middle until everything dries, because I don't want it locked this way or this way. And that will help insulate to keep our center pickups or our fat rolling stock wheels from shorting across our turnouts. And project number 2. So a friend of mine had purchased this MTH water tower for his ON30 layout, actually. Bought it at a show, didn't know whether it worked or not. He just thought he needed a big water tower and got it to the layout and just realized that it was just too big for his use. So passed it off to me. And after testing, yes, it does work. Hang on a second. So that's not the problem. It does work just fine, but we've got some cosmetic issues, mainly that these chains aren't going where they're supposed to. This one is supposed to attach here, and you see that it's not. And then there's supposed to be a chain over here with the water level with like a plumb down here, and then a chain going up here. And in real life, there would be a float on the inside checking the water level. As the float would go up, the plumb would go down. That's why it's lower at the bottom than at the top, telling you how many feet of water are in the tank. So, these are not regular model railroad parts, but Hobby Lobby to the rescue. Sometimes you've got to look outside model railroading to find what you need. And so a quick trip to Hobby Lobby, and in the jewelry section, I found these 6mm jump rings that I can use to put on the end of the chain to attach. And then for this one, a new chain, this one, it was marked $349. Actually, they were on sale. Everything was like 25% off. So like for $5, I've got all the parts that I need except for the plumb, which is, I'm probably going to 3D print that part. My printer is busy doing other projects right now. So that's how I'll do that. I'll run that and I'll run the chain up here into this hole where it's supposed to go. But to show how it works here, we are going to attach this chain to here where it's supposed to. So you take these little, and I do mean little, rings, and they look closed like that. But actually, if you look very, very carefully, and even with my old eyes, I can see that there's a little difference right there. And I'm going to give it a little twist. And now it's open. So with my great vision, I might have to get out the magnifier for this so I can see what I'm doing. These are teeny tiny. Okay. And I don't necessarily have to get the last rung. It's Indo. All right. So I've got my ring is on the end of my chain. And now I'm going to attach it to the ring that is on my device here. All right, and get my pliers back out. We are going to close. Now, there's probably other jewelry tools to do this easier, but not being someone who inhabits the jewelry section very often, making it work with needle nose. All right, we just have to get it closed enough that it's not going to pop out of there. All right, I think that's going to do the trick. So now we put this up here where it belongs. And now it works as designed. Well, actually, I did have a little bit of time to print, so I found this. This was originally a ceiling fan chain pull design that I found on Thingiverse. I changed the dimensions and squeezed it around and everything. And so now I have what kind of looks like a plumb that I can run the chain through to do our level gauge. So let's go ahead and open up this chain. All right, so let's unclasp with this puppy. I want to run this through this hole if I can get it in there. No, that's too big. That is too big to run through that way. So I'm going to want it to be about yay long. So sorry, Nicholas. 3, 2, 1. There we go. Pull it out just enough so I can feed the chain down through it this way. I guess if it popped off, I can always go back in place, right? Ha-ha! Okay, so we're going to pull this down. That's not going anywhere. There we go. We're out the bottom. Now, all right, we're going to put our hook on. Stay there. The hardest part of the whole thing. All right. I'm not going to go all the way down because I want it to be kind of partially empty. Now let's crimp it back. Like I said, I'm sure there's an easier way to do this with actual jeweler's tools. Okay, and so this side, we now know how deep the water is. And let's put this side back together again. All right, now I finally have everything back together the way it belongs. Yay, both here and here. So, thank to Hobby Lobby for the jewelry. And like I said, there was probably a tool that was a lot easier to use than these dildos. But I didn't have that, but you still can make it work. So look for parts, look for things that work that aren't necessarily in your regular model railroad hobby shop. Look for parts elsewhere. Keep your eyes open. You'll never know what you're going to find. And I'd like to pause the video for just a moment and ask that if you're enjoying the video so far, please like it, share it, subscribe to the channel. Just let YouTube know that you like this type of content. And you may even consider supporting the channel financially through a membership. Members have access to exclusive video content, early access to regular videos when possible, plus shout outs, special messages, special photos, and other special features. Just click on the membership button at the bottom of the video near the subscribe tab. And whether you are a member, a subscriber, a regular viewer, or just stopping by, thank you for watching the video and thank you for your support. Now, back to our video. And for project number 3, some of you who have been around for a while may remember a video about a year or so ago where I purchased a big lot of assorted stuff on eBay. And some of the odds and ends included this caboose. Now, I was kind of excited for this caboose because this is the one piece of rolling stock from my childhood trains and truckin' set that I no longer have. I don't know what happened to the caboose. So I was happy to find that in here, but of course it is missing the tool tray. It's got all of the other parts, but no tool tray. So I thought, well, how hard is it to find that part? Well, while as things lie around here, as it turns out, it's not really difficult to find the part. It's just a matter of finding the part for a price that's less than what the car cost. Finding it at parts dealers or on eBay, I would have been better off buying the whole car than just the tool bin, which I thought was kind of ridiculous. I couldn't find a scrap caboose that had the tool bin. I found lots of them that had the cab, but none of them that was just the tool bin by itself or the flat car with the tool bin. And I looked with parts dealers, I looked on eBay. Well, the one place that I hadn't looked was at a local antique mall. Now, I'm blessed in that my local antique mall, there is a guy who has a booth that's a bunch of, well, let's just say it's less than pristine pieces of Lionel and Marx, some Kusan actually as well, bits and pieces. Most of it, if it is complete, it's a low-end scout piece, but most of the pieces are in pieces. So just happened to be going there last week and looking through the pile, I came across this. Now, this is a 9019 Lionel four-wheel plastic wheeled car. This would have been an early MPC sets, 1970, 71. At the very low end to try to cut costs, they did make these four-wheel sets really cheap to try to compete with Marx on the low end. But looky here, we have a tool bin, and it's the same color and same size as what I need for my 9021. It's not exactly the same part. If we pull it off, and it comes apart very easily, we see that this has these square tabs to go into the deck of this 9019, whereas the 9021 uses the same tabs as the stakes for a regular flat car. So the tabs are too big and in the wrong position to do that. But, well, I can just clip these tabs off, get it flat, put it on there, and glue it on there, and I have fixed my 9021 car. So now some of you are saying, well, aren't you destroying this 9019 car? Well, honestly, even if this was on here in this condition, this might be worth $1, $2. I mean, no Lionel person other than just to have one on the shelf is going to want this car, except for, in the collection, and then it's going to have to be pristine. So really, there's no value here that I'm destroying. So let's go ahead and modify our thing here. I'm going to cut off these tabs. Let's get a nice clean cut. Let's go ahead and use the razor saw. I could probably do it with some end nippers, but I want a nice clean cut, and this will do a quickie job. Alrighty, and let's make sure that everything fits nicely. When I was a kid, I found that this worked better if it went on like this first and then put the caboose cab on. That piece never wanted to stay place. And it is there, and that pops in there. Okay, slightly different shade of red, but I don't think it's that noticeable. So I'm going to clean up the pieces, and then I'm going to use just a dab of rubber cement to hold everything in place. Elmer's would probably do the trick. But that way, if for some reason I ever want to try to remove this, like maybe if I find the right tool bin for this, or that or whatever, it's removable if I want it to be. So let's clean them up and see what happens. Oh, thick. All right, that's better. I had it on there a little too thick. Of course, you can always peel off any excess, so it's not the end of the world. Just a little bit. Enough to hold it on. Line it up. And let it dry. And then this, maybe I'll throw a flat car load or something on it. Maybe use it for part of the Christmas layout. I don't know. Yeah, it is what it is. And now it's time for our quickie project number 4. Now, you may remember this 1615 switcher that I resurrected from the dead in a previous video. And when I did it before, this particular rivet, I mean, it was in there. It wasn't the greatest, but I was able to, get it in there and stay long enough to run for a while. Well, eventually, this rivet is just completely worn out. It is time to replace it. So I ordered replacement parts, actually 2 of them, in case I screw one of them up, from the train tender. This is where I get most of my parts. This is not a paid endorsement. This is just who I use for most of my Lionel parts. So let's get one of them out of there, and we are going to replace this rivet. Now, you don't need to have a whole lot of fancy equipment to do it. And we're going to show you, I'm going to use a Phillips screwdriver to get this off. There we go. Phillips number 1. And let's pop the eccentric off. Oh, don't lose that. I'll need that later. Pull out my screw here. Here is the offending rivet, and you can see that I can just, of course, now it's going to stay in there. There it goes. Okay. And don't know if you could see or not, but the back side of that rivet was pretty well shot. All right, so I've got my new rivet there, but I'm also going to have to take this part off here. So let's see, that's a slotted. Loosen that. And just to make sure, using the other side as a guide. So my side rod goes there. And through it goes there. Now we don't really need any fancy tools. We're just going to turn this over, and we're going to use the point of an awl to spread out the ends of the rivet. And if you don't have that, a small nail will do the trick. Keep it from going through my workbench. Line that up. And now it's good. The end is flared out. The rivet is in place. Alrighty. And now we're ready to reassemble. Now, I'm not going to tighten this all the way yet because I need to make sure all of the rods are in the right place before I tighten it down completely. I'm just going to get it lined up with the hole and get it started. Just as a placeholder. Okay. Now this one. Now let's use the other side as a guide for where this gets tightened down. When I've got this in as far back as it goes, now this should be like straight up and down. So let's put this in the full back position, and that should be right there. And let's tighten it down and see if it binds. Looks good. And there's the rivet, and I've got a spare just in case. That project, number 4, is done. And so there you have it, 4 little projects that nevertheless make a big difference on the layout. So hopefully you found some inspiration for some of the projects that you're working on, and that will help you to keep those trains running. And we'll catch you next time with more toy train tips and tricks.